Good afternoon, everybody. This is Scott Palmer, Executive Officer of the Builders and Remodelers Association of Greater Boston, and welcome to our Wednesday webinar. Today, we're going to have a presentation by Will Derigo, who works with ICF and also has been a long-time participant in the Mass Save program. Right now, I'm going to change over a presentation rights to Will, and we'll get his presentation up and going immediately. I will say we are recording this webinar for future viewing through YouTube on our website. So that'll be up there as soon as I figure out all the connectivity. If you have any questions for Will, we will open up the lines after the event, but if you want to put something up on the chat, that's fine too, and we'll field those questions after the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the intro, Scott. So I guess I'll start off with asking if you're able to see my screen.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. All right, and again, thanks for that intro. Yeah, I can give a little bit more on my background. I've been working under the Mass Save umbrella at this point for a little over 15 years, so I've been in it for a while. Originally, I started as a home energy rater, doing a lot of blower door testing and getting out to sites and working under the ResNet umbrella as well. So that's a little bit about me. We can jump into the agenda here. So I'll give a quick overview of just the Mass Save portfolio, what we're doing on the residential new construction program. We'll hit on the 3 paths that we have currently, and then we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into the Renovations and Additions path that we basically launched this year. So moving ahead, discussing Mass Save, what it is. It's basically an initiative that was sponsored by all of the electric utilities and the energy service providers within the state. It includes everyone you see here, everyone in the banner below, but it's anywhere from Blackstone, it's out in the Berkshires there, all the way right through into Boston and down in the Cape as well. So the program itself, we put this together to be a single point of contact to cover projects with multiple fuel types, the different utilities, and as well as looking at both commercial and residential meters. That we'll get into a little bit more when I review what's involved with the high-rise program. All the incentives are currently performance-based. There are some exceptions, and again, I can touch on a couple of those later on in the slide. And where the money comes from, so how do we fund this? Well, it's basically coming from a portion paid out of your utility bill. Once you're looking through there, if you ever wanted to break it down, you can kind of see there's this little service charge that comes in, and that money is available basically back to you, and I'll explain how that works a little bit later as well. The requirements and the targets, they all align with the Massachusetts base and stretch energy codes. There's a couple baselines that we set up, and that's how it's compared to new code. We're not a program that serves kind of just building to code. We want to obviously push the envelope there and create a little bit more savings above and beyond what's currently listed there. And so ICF, we are the program administrator's lead vendor for this program, for the residential new construction program. Again, towards the end, I'll just mention, there's the existing home side of things where that's a different vendor. They're a different lead vendor for that one. Again, the company I work for, ICF, we're covering the RNC program. So I talk about the 3 paths. Here, there's the low-rise side. This is all new construction again, looking at single-family homes and multifamily homes, 3 stories and less. So basically, you could even have a 3-story building where it might have commercial retail on the first floor. That would be included. So that's looking at low-rise. The Renovations Additions, this is the split. This is kind of where things have shifted, and I'll get more into the definitions there. But it's looking at single-family homes, and again, that same 3-story or less building, multifamily building. And then, of course, we have high-rise. This is looking at buildings all multifamily, 4 stories and greater with 5 or more units. So here again, you'd probably see something like 4 stories. The first floor might have a coffee shop, some other commercial retail, a salon, could be any one of those things. And it's all new construction and up to 50% gut rehab. The measures work a little bit differently there, and we'll dig just a little bit there as well. All right, so low-rise and RNA paths. This is going to be kind of compared to the high-rise path, right? So we have these two columns here. As I discussed, the single family and low-rise multifamily, that's all RNA. It's following a certain code. That is the residential energy code. And in the last 2 years, there's been quite a bit in terms of changes to the mass space code. With respect to energy itself, it hasn't shifted too much. There's little things here and there that got peppered in. Some of it relates to mechanical ventilation. And overall, though, the code's been pretty consistent. It's been under the 2015 IACC and with a couple little red lines here and there. But now we're on the ninth edition of that code. So some of those things kind of play into it. But overall, nothing major in the last, let's say 2 years. These projects, the development time, it's anywhere from 5 years. A half a year to 2 years. Whereas on the high-rise side of things, you're looking at the commercial code, and then development time for these is anywhere from 2 to 5 years. So the goal is to kind of get into these projects really early and actually change what they decide to do for development. We want to make sure a lot of these measures are built into the plant and specs. If we get in there too late, especially on the high-rise side, it's really hard to shift things. You might be able to tackle some things like lighting, some low-hanging fruit there, but in terms of really kind of changing that building design and really making it effective, we want to get in there really early because the development time is so long. Jumping back to low-rise, you could have a modular build out, and 6 months later, you've got foundation to somebody moving in. On the low-rise side, again, looking at testing and performance, these are all done by the program-approved HERS raters, and so we have a list that we can provide to builders and homeowners of different rating companies throughout the state, and there's quite a few of them. We've built up a very big pool, and there's a lot of great teams out there doing some really good things in terms of moving the market further. And that's how this program has been since I've been in. Again, going back 15 years. There was one kind of rating company that was doing most of everything, and now there's just a whole community out there of guys that have really taken the time to learn this stuff. They've been trained, and they're really excelling and pushing that envelope, and that's why we've got such good codes here in Massachusetts. We're always kind of one of the leading states in terms of energy efficiency. So looking at this last bullet here, incentives for the low-rise side, currently there's nothing really there for the commercial systems, and it's a little bit a non-issue because most of these smaller buildings, they really only are going to have hallway lighting. They may sometimes have some mechanical ventilation requirements for that hallway, but it's currently not captured. We're always thinking of ways to improve that, so that's something we will do. On the high-rise path, the verification that's completed utilizing the architecture and the engineers approved submittals. So these are all, again, qualified licensed professionals. They're submitting all of these legal documents to us, and we can take the info from there. So that was a quick side-by-side. Let's look at the low-rise and RNA performance path and kind of how that works. So this first slide, I know it's a little bit of an eye test, but this is where the money comes from. 1 second here. So basically, we use these different energy modeling tools, and we calculate the number of kilowatts and BTUs used and saved. So the breakdown here is, again, kind of looking at, you build it a certain way, you do better, here's what we're going to pay you for all the extra, how far you push it, how much better you actually do. And then kind of at the end of the day, what it looks like is the average incentives anywhere from $1,500 to $1,800. There's also, that does include no cost LED lighting. So if you come through the program and you're working with the rater, they will provide you a lighting catalog, and you can pick all of these different types of LED bulbs to put into your project. And for the raters, we offer some benefit in terms of basically collecting the data. So we need them to provide us those data points and give us the energy model. Here's another busy slide. This one, again, is kind of more focused on the low-rise side of things. There's an additional incentive if you're going to build to Energy Star and you're actually going for that extra certificate. They do look at a little bit more than just energy. Oftentimes, they'll include some things for water. They kind of look at just a little bit more in terms of comfort and balancing systems. So there's a little bit there, and we offer just an extra $100 per single family and $25 per unit on the multifamily side. And again, the general rule of thumb there is kind of what's already looked at with code. We're looking at a tight envelope. We want to make sure that these homes are air sealed well, and if there's a lower air movement through these homes, there's a lower load for heating. And then again, you can control that. So we'll talk about kind of the ventilation requirements a little bit later. Again, tight ducts. We're really looking to shift the way ducts are put into homes. Right now, most likely you probably have a system either in your basement or in your attic. And if they're leaking that heat out to those places where you're not really living. So if we reduce that leakage, obviously we're going to keep that heat within the rooms that you need it. So in your living room, in your bedrooms, in your kitchens. AC system sizing. We again want to make sure that these are done to the latest editions of ACA manuals JNS. So making sure you're not oversizing, making sure you're not dumping in a big system where it's going to overload those rooms. You don't want too much air going in, otherwise that system will turn off and then turn on and then turn off, and that cycle continues where with the AC, if that keeps happening, you're going to get a cold room that feels clammy because it won't pull that moisture out. You need something a little bit more, a system that's kind of running steady so you feel cool and comfortable and it pulls that moisture out as well. Going back to insulation and air sealing, the inspections, the air sealing checklist, this really helps kind of those areas that are always kind of maybe overlooked with different subs. You've got the main builder, he's probably doing a great job, but he's obviously hiring some subs that come in and out of these places and they're not, it's not their main job. They're just in there to do their little part and then leave. This checklist makes sure that those areas are getting looked at. Same with the raters, they're in there too to make sure those little areas, looking at your foundation sill or certain specific spots in the home are getting covered and not just, the once over and then they're gone, they're out. Finally, the high efficacy lighting. I mentioned that the program's giving out these LEDs, and we just want to make sure that the home is getting the best bang for the buck in terms of lighting. Depending on some homes, especially with home automation coming into the play, lights are usually on a lot. So if they're going to be, they should be low watt usage. All right, so I talked about me being Energy Rater and ResNet, kind of looking at those standards. So ResNet, it's the Residential Energy Services Network. I know it's a mouthful, but they've pretty much kind of created this standard. And looking at the column on the right there's basically the HERS index. So if you're looking at a reference home, that's based on a home built in 2006. That is kind of the reference. You're looking at something where that's 100, and then going down to 0. That's your best home that you can build. You can go beyond that, but let's just call it. That's a pretty straight scale. In this program, we're looking for a home to be hitting the 55. It's not exactly what we need, but that is what is required in all stretch code communities. And to talk a little bit about that stretch code, it's pretty much 70% of the state at this point. There's well over 200 plus communities that have adopted the stretch code. So you're most likely in an area or a town that's requiring you to have a new home built to this standard. So it's pretty aggressive from the state to do, and it's a great thing. It really helps kind of reduce energy use overall. So the participants, they include builders, developers, and homeowners. Where again we require these HERS rating companies to come in and make sure that all these little different pieces are incorporated. It includes hiring the HERS rater, who's again going to look at your plans and make changes. If there's something they see that doesn't really make sense, they'll probably point to it and just say, hey, you probably could do some type of advanced framing here or change the insulation type here. And it really gives you it's a lot of value, definitely a lot of value for what you're getting there. There are the 2 inspections. One is going to be after installation, but before drywall. And again, that's to keep your subs honest, making sure that the subcontractors doing their part to to do all little details. If they're doing fiberglass, it's making sure they're splitting the bat to go, around some plumbing or around some wiring, and not just stuffing it in there, because you can see it from the front and it might look great, but there's always little details behind the front of things where you don't really see. So they're covering that stuff, and then at the final inspection, they're doing that blower door and make sure your ducts are tight as well. And of course, after that part is all done, we start giving out those checks. So we get the savings data from those energy models, and we process those incentive checks and get those out. So looking at the high-rise path, here it's again a little bit different than low-rise and Renovations Additions, and I'll keep this one quick just because I do want to focus more on what the call is about today, and that's that new path that we have. But it would just be good to get a quick overview of what we're doing here in this field. So currently, again, the incentive is determined by a modeled performance, and in this case, the software used is called Open Studio. It's based on Energy Plus, and these are all Department of Energy software platforms. So this is created again by them, and it's pretty involved tool. It takes a lot of time to put these together, and the program has built a platform to use a lot of basic kind of really minimize the time spent on these. We had a vetted company come in, and this was third-party reviewed in two different engineering firms. So we've got a lot of oversight here to make sure that the savings are correct and accurate. So looking at a lot of this, I had talked about everything being kind of performance-based, with a little caveat of some prescriptive incentives. In the high-rise side of things, the garage itself for the building is left out. So when you're making a model, you're not including the site lighting or the garage. So those are prescriptive. The program, the utility sponsors and the program administrators, they have a certain set value for what type of lights you can put out there, and we're able to incorporate those into the tool directly, and it spits out the incentive for those as well. For technical assistance, depending on the big size of the building, so we worked on a couple big buildings. So Millennium Tower, which is I think 56 stories, we were able to work on that and capture the in-unit portion of the building. I think in this case it was both Eversource and National Grid. They provide technical assistance with another vendor, an engineering firm, to actually help create these energy models and pay for a big portion of that, which is required for code. So they give assistance there as well. And then starting in 2019, this is still to be determined, but we're really trying to push the envelope forward again, as we try to do, because it is, again, it's a program that we just want to do more. We don't want it to be code, we want to be better. So we're going to hopefully push for incentives for passive house. And there's a few multi-family passive house buildings that are out there, and if things work out, we'll be doing what we see here on the right. So this building that we went and tested was actually pretty good. It was a different firm. They did the testing for us. They gave us they let us join, and we got to take some pictures, and it was a great building to do. But they were kind of surprised at how tight the building actually was. They set up multiple blower doors, and they only ended up needing 2 fans. And I believe this was a 40+ unit building, but that's the idea behind passive house. We're really making a great shell, and you can see the different ring sizes here, and we're on one of the small rings, and there's 2 different modes we test in and different pressures we reach. But it just goes to show that when you're designing ahead in things like passive house, it really does make a difference. You can really control the air in a building and do a lot in terms of saving energy. So whole building path and in-unit only, I talked about these really large buildings with the whole building path. So sometimes we might just do the in-unit portion where we just look at the lighting and any measures that the utilities might not capture through a bigger tool. With the whole building path, again, we're still making those big models, but we look at everything else. We look at the envelope, water production, motors and drives, a whole bunch of little different things here. And we're able to, again, capture those savings and report back to the client. So the process, it's a little bit different than low rise just because of all those different steps. I talked about the development time. between 2 and 5 years. Here, a project's going to register. They'll give us all their documents. There's a lot more than you'd kind of expect. We're getting plans, and there's so many different types. You'll get the same plan, and it looks like you're reading, a few hundred pages, but there's all the mechanical aspects, the electrical aspect, the plumbing, and all the way from landscape design. There's a lot to dig through. So in some cases, we might have a charrette with a project team where we'll get in there for a day, and you're working with basically all the different contractors that are going to be on that site, because they'll be there for months at a time, and it's all about coordination, getting the right steps in at the right order. You could have and it happens all the time, and you'll see it all the time when you're kind of in this field, but you'll be going out to a site, and this does happen even on single family homes, but you'll have a plumber come in after you've had your framing inspection and start cutting all these big holes in and just tearing through your structure. Then the framer might have to go back in and repair things, or the code official might notice this, and so that coordination is huge. It's such a big deal, and in these bigger projects, those charrettes go a long way, and there's multiple meetings where a lot of the subs are on site and just planning out the day. So from there, we can model these different scenarios. We can say, if you're changing out this type of system, here's what benefit you'll get, here are the savings, and here's the additional incentive to cover those costs. Finally, we give the offer letter after we get that first model really nailed down, and we know what the design is going to be. And then we're going to have it verified when complete. And again, that's when we collect all those stamped submittals. So an architect's going to go in, or an engineer will go in and say, yep, they used this system, this heating system, or this plug and play, or whatever widget it is. We get that stamped official document from the state and say, okay, great, it was approved. So the incentives, this one again, I test, but it's basically what the software calculates, and the saving rates are there below. So you can just take a second to digest that one, and we'll keep going. So additional requirements. Again, I talked about this being 4 stories or more. And this also could happen where you might have a 3-story building, or let's say a 2-story building, but it's using a master metered system. So again, that kind of means it's got one commercial meter on that building, and let's say one heating system, and it's distributed evenly through all the different units. That's going to come through this program because we have the tools to capture those commercial savings. And the reason for that is that commercial rated energy is put out less than a residential rate. So you're going to be paying less per kilowatt, or less per therm in a commercial building, because the use is so much higher. So that's the rationale and the reasoning for that type of system. The developer or the owner, they're going to be enrolling the project, and they receive the incentives. They can always assign the incentive to a third party if they're doing all the work. So in terms of what it takes to deliver all the the plans, all the submittals, there's a little bit of involvement there, and so they're able to do that and assign the incentives to another party. All the projects are required to register at prior to the start of construction, and again, the reason is that we're trying to drive change. If you've already got your specs and everything, all said and done, why would we give you money for that? You've already designed it. It would be called what the program administrators call free ridership, which is something we have to avoid. If you've already designed it, we want to make it better. We don't want to just kind of, oh, you did it, okay, great. We're just handing out cash for something that the intent isn't there. Finally, the energy model, it's got to be completed by one of the program approved modeling softwares. And again, I talked about that one being Open Studio. And here's a quick look at some of the incentives that we offer. This building, this is in Northampton, and it's called Live 155. They basically got an incentive total of 53 grand, which is significant. I know some of these projects could be a few $1 million, but that's definitely helping. That's paying someone's salary for the year. To kind of track a lot of this stuff, and it does a lot. So it seems like insignificant in terms of the total project, but when you think about it realistically from from what it could even do for a project team. It could have another body on site. It could be a lot of different things. So the money really is valuable there. And in this case, it was $700 a unit, and a lot of electricity was saved here. So I believe, yeah, this was an all-electric building, and they got additional incentives from the Mass CEC. So this is another collaborative, and it's the Clean Energy Center. So they offer additional incentives on top of the Mass Save program. Finally, this had on-site generation, so there was some solar here, and it's generating a third of the electricity required for that building itself. All right, so the renovations and additions path. So here's what we wanted to kind of dive into deeper today, and I'll give you a little bit of a background here. So this started as a pilot from 2010 through 2013, and this took a long time to build out because why? Well, we wanted to create create the path to basically fill a void between other Mass Save offerings. I mentioned that there's been new construction. There was always this program has been around for, I think, I want to say 20 plus years. Same thing with the HS program. It's been around even longer, so that's existing homes. But what about all these additions that are going up? No one's really looking at those, and there was no option for a homeowner to kind of get any incentive, and they're paying into that fund. They're paying an electric bill too, so it took a lot to kind of get that developed. So we struggle a little bit to see what we could do because of cost and the level of effort to participate. It kind of did get there were programs and pilots here and there, and it was hard to get off the ground just because, again, it was like figuring out how do we make it work? How is it cost effective, et cetera. So we kind of stepped in and said, all right, I think we could do something here. We could ICF, we could do something here to make it a new offering and really make it kind of get off the ground. So in this case, a renovation, again, it's got to be somewhat cost effective. So there are some eligibility requirements. The addition or the renovation itself has to be at least 500 square feet. But this does include the floor, walls, and ceilings. So you don't have to have a huge, it's not like a 500 square foot addition. It's basically, it could be a little bit smaller, but it's got to include all of those, like an addition on the side of a house. It's got to include the different areas. So that's at least a starting point. Again, something smaller, it wouldn't scale. There wouldn't be to send someone out and do that. It wouldn't make sense in terms of the money. It'd kind of be it's not, and it's really not how much energy is that going to save. So there's a couple train of thoughts there. The projects, they also must achieve at least 5% in savings in order to qualify for incentives, and that's compared to the home itself, along with a wide baseline for the addition. So obviously an addition is going to have to follow new codes. They already have to have a certain type of insulation value for the walls, for the ceiling, etc. But in the existing portion of the home, you're going to be comparing it to whatever was there. So here are some stats. This is what ICF has done in the last year through 2018 as part of the pilot. We got 25 homes completed, and the average incentive was close to $2,000. I mean, it was a pretty good incentive for people just kind of trying to add on and upgrade their home. On average, the incentives are anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500, and there is a maximum cap of $10,000 per unit. And I'll talk a little bit more about that 10,000 number. It could be it takes a lot to get there. I want to set that expectation that it's not something that everybody's gonna be hitting, but it would require some really big changes and renovations to your home. It's looking at really insulating those walls really well, and almost even changing how they're built. A lot of typical older homes, they might only have a 2x4 cavity, so that that's obviously not going to cut it. It might be adding a little bit there to making it a bigger wall or doing something else. Also, do-it-yourself projects are not allowed. The project has to have a valid building permit to enroll. So you got to be working with a contractor. And again, a homeowner could be pulling that permit, but it's got to meet all those other eligibility requirements. And it also has to follow, there's some other eligibility requirements that we have here. I just don't have them all listed, but on the next slides, when you look at the marketing, we'll get into a little bit further. So to get this off the ground, I mentioned that there was a pilot in 2010 to 2013. It didn't really go anywhere, so we tried, or we're trying, some additional marketing. And our website is live. So if you were to Google Mass Save Renovations Additions, you'll get to this page. So the website is now up. We also have some digital ads going out and an email campaign headed out as well. And we're also starting to partner with local home builder associations, as well as doing some circuit riding. So yesterday I was actually out while I was headed out to a different site. I was stopping at a couple of these different places. So handing out these items. So we're getting out brochures, some signage. So if you head out to like a Home Depot, you might see some flyers there, some of these different postcards, and as well as getting out some case studies. So the marketing, again, I mentioned, yeah, the different places, the Home Depots, the Lowe's, the lumber yards. Yesterday I hit Sudbury Lumber and then also the Sudbury building department. So I was able to give some of that market material out there, so you'd be able to find it in those offices. A lot of my colleagues, they're hitting many more spots. We have a couple of guys that are dedicated to the field, and they're hitting many more places. We also have strategically located. I have colleagues that are strategically located in different places. So we have a couple people that live out in Western Mass. One's living on the Cape, and then we have two on the North Shore. So we're really trying to cover the state and make this really take off. So when you're headed out there, you'll hopefully see these little pamphlets, and people will start be able to take these home and start reaching out. So again, we're really hoping that this helps even just all the different contractors that are out there, really hoping to help drum up some business for them, because there's some opportunity there. There's a little bit of extra incentive, and it'll hopefully help again there in terms of making a difference, making the homes comfortable. So many things that'll happen with this launch and this path. So I'm going to quickly talk about energy modeling. I know we're coming up on time, and I want to leave some room for questions, so I'll get through this part a little bit quicker. Might not be as relevant for most of us on the call, but looking at it, I had mentioned that there's going to be the home energy raters. They are going to again be instrumental in helping us get this off the ground. There's a tool that we have to collect all this different information and data, and there's also a software that we'll get into that captures and looks at how we capture the savings. So currently it's a web-based application. All the participants can enroll online through their verifier, and the data inputs, they include existing square footage, the primary heating fuel type, and then at the final, they're going to put in all the updated lights that we give them. So again, there's free lighting that's offered, and we'll capture all those final energy savings and incentives. So here's how that model works. I kind of talked about a pre-construction home. So there's your home there on the left of the screen. Now you're going to do some renovations inside. You're going to fix up that old office, put some new stuff in there, get some new windows, and you're going to add this garage with let's say a master bedroom over there, master suite. This software is looking at both of those pieces. So then you've got your post-construction home, and below it is kind of the baseline. That's what it's assuming. So again, I talked about looking at your baseline, which maybe there was nothing in those walls on the left there. And on the right, you might have had, or you have to follow. Here's some feedback. All right, follow what code is asking for. So in these, in this room, you probably need R49 over that attic, etc. So comparing those, that's how that software works. Again, the software that we're looking at it's called Ecotrope, and this is something you can Google, but there's a lot of functionality to this. So it builds out every component of your home. It's looking at the walls layer by layer, the insulation, the drywall to the siding. You can input values for all of those, looking at R value, the different equipments. It's a very, very robust tool. And then here's just a little bit more. Again, this is maybe in the weeds, so we can push through this, but this is how the records are built. And there's one that I'm working on at the bottom there. So you kind of see, we covered the rest of this just for privacy purposes, but this is one I'm working on. So it kind of gives you the project name, the street address, and what the status is. So for trainings, again, this is really more for the verifier that's going out to the site, and they're going to be able to work with the homeowner and the contractors and really kind of give them an education on what there is in terms of energy efficiency. We've got this energy efficiency learning center put up, and there's videos there that kind of talk about the different things that could be done to existing air conditioning and heat pump systems or furnaces, etc. So it's we're really trying to do a lot to put together some really good info for everyone involved. And then we also have some next steps documents that we'll leave with the homeowner and the participant, and it kind of gives them what to expect sometimes before we arrive or after that first inspection. And it's helpful for them just to kind of be ready for, that depending on how long it takes for that project to complete, the next steps of where they're going to go after that. So closing up on the end here, if you're not building a new home, what else could they do? All right, so the Mass Save program, it does the home energy assessments. If you're just replacing your heating system, there's also rebates. If you're going to change an air conditioner, same thing. You might get a better unit, and you'll get some incentive to kind of meet the cost of just getting a base unit. So there's a lot there, and you can visit masssave.com to see all the different offerings. So I think we have about 5 minutes left. I'll open up the little question box here. I haven't looked at it yet just because I was trying to get through that deck, but let's see. All right. So the raters, when will the raters be issued the flyers? I believe I'll know that probably Friday. We're having a meeting Friday, and I know that we're putting them together because we just had them put out. So I think my guess is in the next, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks. So that's my best answer at the moment, but I will know for sure on Friday. I'll get back to you. And then there's a comment from SEA. So yeah, Sustainable Energy Analytics, they're a rater, and they're a BRAGB member, and they're on the call today. So feel free to reach out. Will the PowerPoint? Yes, I will get the PowerPoint over to Scott, and then he can distribute to give out.
Okay, Will, that was excellent. I'm going to unmute your phone. So if you do have a phone open, I'd appreciate it. You close it, or we'll get a wicked echo to the rest of us. So if anybody has a question, you can certainly feel free to ask it now. Thank you. Your lines are open. And thank you all.
Definitely a lot of info. Scott, thank you.
I appreciate everybody using the chat. Yeah, we will get the presentation up and send it to everybody that was registered on this call, and we will also post the presentation recording in the next few days on our website under webinars. So that being said, Will, I wrote down a lot of questions that I want to ask you from a BRAGB point of view, because you look like you've been doing a lot of great work statewide. So I want to get some idea of how that remodeling program is working in particular, because that's near and dear to us, of course.
Sure.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
And thank everybody. It was a nice session. A lot of people came on board. I appreciate you taking the time to join our webinar. Thank you all very much, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.